Greetings, fam. We often think of health as just referring to the body, but we have to consider the mental health of the brain and the mind. We know the mind and the brain are two separate things. The mind is the etheric realm where all intangible data is moved and stationed, and the brain is the receiving device used to access these etheric waves. The brain is like a cell phone that receives and sends signals through certain electromagnetic waves. And we know that there are different types of electromagnetic waves: brain waves, radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays, etc. But of course, our main concern is brain waves. These are the waves that we send and receive our thoughts through, or rather, the electromagnetic channel our thoughts move through. Now, what does all of this have to do with mental health? Well, something the people who sit at the very top of the social order know is that brain waves affect people consciously and subconsciously. For example, if you're at a meeting and someone walks by you and they frown at you, they don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. But the energy between both of you becomes tense automatically and probably a little hostile, which puts you both in a different frequency than the one prior to this act. Conversely, if you've ever been agitated and snapped at a loved one, and instead of snapping back, they just sort of touched you gently and asked you what was wrong, the agitated energy can seem to leave your body with almost like a heavy exhale, and then you become much more calm. These are the examples of conscious cause and effects. Now, an example of unconscious cause and effects are if you're told by so-called experts that people who don't want to go about in society with a cloth strapped over their face all day are trying to hurt you, your mind may engage and entertain that statement. And based on prior evidences presented to you, if you feel that they're factual or not factual, that will now define how you will look at people who don't want to engage in this type of behavior. In your mind, you don't say to yourself, I now see these people as enemies, or I see these people as comrades. But that categorization process still happens in the mind. And maybe not that day, or maybe not that week, but at some point when you do enter the public and you see who conforms to this rule and who does not, you make a judgment based on that unconscious mental deduction. A deduction so strident that you may actually want to harm the person based only on someone's opinion who is claimed to be an expert. Someone who you may have never even seen, let alone their credentials, and you have no idea what their agenda is or what their level of ethical standards are. There are a chain of evidences that come together in your mind that construct this thought slowly, many times beyond our recognition that this opinion or concept has even been formed. And they can all happen based on non-factual data or observations. For example, you could be told something by supposed experts, but who are these experts? You could be told the only way to protect yourself from a danger is by trusting another system's chemical. But do you know your own body well enough to know if it will protect itself or not, to where you'll even need this chemical? You could be told all this from a news source that reports the news, but do they have an agenda, or do they represent a special interest group, or are they paid by the same people who tell you you need the chemical solution? If you don't check each of these origins of data, your brain is being hand-carried to a predestined point of belief by a force other than its own critical volition. But your conscious mind will only engage at the point that you're questioned about your disposition, and you will instinctively feel and say you made that choice. So what we've just explained is how a ruling authority can twist the minds of the unlearned and divide societies into different categories or into two swaths of rivalry without expressing any combative language or signals per se.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
What's important to note is that the authority itself has to be psychotic to do this. Only psychotic individuals place two unwitting forces against one another under the guise of protecting either one of those forces. If you want to protect anyone or anything, the most basic preliminary is to do nothing that will cause them harm.
With unity, we can do great things, important things.
That includes pitting them against one another or pitting them against some sort of foreseeable rival. But again, if you don't know or are not questioning the outcome of real-time situations, then these things kind of escape you. You miss them. One of the protections against mental deficiency is reading. I don't mean only reading to be educated on information, which of course is beneficial. But a secret about reading is the ability for it to compress your random thoughts into chronological sequences that are logical and practical to follow. What do I mean by this? If you ever been in a situation where you've been sitting for a few minutes and then you get deep in thought, and in an instant you come out of that thinking, it may seem like you just stepped out of a mental hurricane because your thoughts were flying and running everywhere. What about this? Did I do that? Should I do that? How is my mother? Your thoughts rarely follow a chronological straight path for even a short length of time. They're usually everywhere at once, and sometimes a few thoughts are in outer space as well. When you read, the story is always in a linear, chronological order, no matter the subject, and your brain has to follow this rational sequence of events for as long as you read. Now you will notice in your mind that all the images and visualizations happen in sequential order as you follow the story. This gives the mind practice in orderly thinking so that when you need to contemplate in a practical order, it's not a foreign concept or exercise for your brain and mind. This is one of the reasons why people who read a lot are very good communicators versus those that speak to you in half sentences and finish the rest of the story with, you know what I mean, or you know what I'm saying, things of that nature. And that's for the most part. Of course, there are the anomalies to the contrary, but I think you get what I'm saying. What will also happen is the mind will be able to follow sequential information, and if something is out of sequence or does not seem to fit, you have a better chance of catching it since life truly does imitate art, and that includes the art of skullduggery. If I came to you right now and I said, I'll call you when I wake up tomorrow night, your mind would automatically question what is happening to the early part of my day, and most likely you would think that I'm either working in the day or lazy. Reading enhances this skill, and the sequence of asking who is saying what and why is a skill that will bring you to a more pertinent questions in everyday presentations to you. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, this is a simple information or common sense. But if these concepts were so common, we would not be in the situation we're in as a society, and the jackals who manipulate people's minds would not be so successful. But anyway, to the next video. Peace. If you learned from this video, help support the study and time to bring this knowledge to our community. It does take time and effort to be concise and as accurate as possible so that we can stay abreast of important health information and techniques. Please visit the site and follow these links.